Join the Shot Talk Patreon at patreon.com/shottalk. You'll get access to bonus content, Q&A opportunities for future guests, and more. Thanks and enjoy.
A lot of creatives, I would say, probably grew up in, high school and things. You're in the shadow reading a book or drawing or whatever by yourself, and then you're thrown into, you get an animation, and it's like, oh, now you're gonna make this thing with like 1,000 other people, and you're thrown into like a big party, like everyone's in the pool, and like, I want to go in the corner, like, I gotta take my shirt off? No.
Hey everybody, this is Rodrigo and welcome to another episode of Shot Talk. This week we have my friend Chris Palmer. Chris, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I normally start with the topic of where artists got their start, but this time I want to do a little bit differently and just kind of jump right into the Voltron process, if that's cool with you.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm only one small part of it, so.
Yes, yes, a big part of it though, I think, just because I was watching that. I watched the first couple seasons and working my way through the third one right now, and I noticed that show has a really cool, I would say like a level of sophistication that you don't see a lot in animation, just because there's a lot of really kind of filmic and quiet moments that you guys let the show kind of breathe and have those moments. So yeah. I'm really curious, like, obviously you're not working in a traditional TV way where there's a ton of script and dialogue. You guys are probably working a little more outline based, right?
No, it's scripted. Yeah.
It is scripted.
Yeah,
okay.
A lot of that is definitely all built in by the showrunners and the writers. Going for probably a little bit older audience for the show. It's definitely script based.
That's surprising, yeah, because normally I guess the danger of that is that sometimes it gets a little bloated with script, but.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like some of before Voltron, there was shows I worked on that, you'd get the audio records of the actors, and it would already be, say in a 22-minute episode TV show, you would get like, 28 minutes of dialogue, and you're like, whoa, this is already way too long. And you knew that even cutting it down, it was going to be a mile-a-minute show,
right.
That you were just like, how are we going to fit all this in? But Voltron definitely, it took its time. I came in a little later in the show, so I didn't start until, I think the first episode I worked on was episode 7, and even then, like, I got to come in and see what the team had already been doing, and that Voltron didn't show up until episode 3, which the way Netflix did it, the first 3 episodes are like one movie. They're combined into that, right. Like one movie. So he does show up technically in that first big episode, but initially that was broken apart into 3 regular size episodes, and yeah, that he didn't show up until the third one was awesome. I was like, there's this great build up, and you don't see that in any, cartoons. If you have a main like superhero character, like, if there's
Power Rangers or something, right?
Yeah, like they're going to be the Power Rangers in the first episode. Clark Kent's going to be Superman in that first episode. You're not going to just, follow Clark and Lois for the first, 2 or 3 episodes and then reveal that there's a Superman in the show.
That was great. I mean, that really got me hooked to begin with. I remember when I saw the first 3, so it was definitely effective that way, I thought. So how do you guys manage to keep it still feel like I said, like filmic? Like, I'm guessing there's a lot of back and forth between boarding and writing room, or how does that work?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, luckily, because we had all worked together on most of us all came over from Legend of Korra and Nickelodeon. So there's a working relationship with everybody. We all respect what each other do. Even, I don't know how all shows work, but a lot of things I had worked on, the writers were not present until probably Korra was the first show I had worked on where there were in-house writers. So, generally once a writer had finished something, the director and board artist took it then, and you try and hold on to what was there, but things have to shift sometimes. Like I said, when shows were way too long, or things get cut. But on Korra and then on Voltron after, there's more connectivity between all the departments, and you can see it in the show.
I was going to say it totally shows. It totally shows that it feels like it's a very collaborative. Because otherwise, those things don't happen with animation. It's like usually, again, it's like the concept of every island being a department, or every department being an island, causes that kind of stuff. But I think it's a super fun show. I didn't watch the original '84 one until I saw the new one, and then I really appreciated what you guys were doing with the new one.
Yeah, I mean, they I think Tim, the head writer, and Joaquin and Lauren, like everyone, if you've seen any other interviews with them, they're definitely always talking about they wanted to make the show that they remembered, not what's actually there. And it's a great show, but when you're a kid and you're watching things, you kind of years later you imagine it as being this amazing thing, and better than it was. And of course there are amazing things still in it, but consistency and just, I don't know, the perfection of it all. It's not quite there,
right?
And so that's definitely something they wanted to put into this new version. So.
I loved. I saw an episode this past week where you guys had the alternate. I believe you directed it. It was the one where they go to an alternate universe and they run into Shiro, who is now Sven. Mm-hmm. Which is obviously a reference to the original 1984 version, which I thought was hilarious because it felt really funny to me watching that again and thinking, why did the American dub team decide to make him Swedish? That just seemed very, or Norwegian or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, that really cracked me up when he started having the Swedish accent. It really got me.
It's fun. It's crazy because I'm one of or was one of the 3 episodic directors on it. So as you're watching episodes come out from the writers, certain times you would see episodes and think, like there was a Space Mall episode. There's the fun episodes, there's the really big deal episodes, there's the smaller episodes that have the really amazing character moments. And I know for the directors, you're like, oh, I wanted that one. Oh, so it's really cool to see what the other directors do with it too. And just that, but there's definite, like, I was happy to get that episode and have this like alternate reality thing with nods to the way that things could have been in our current show, and nods back to the '84 show.
It's got that effect like in Cowboy Bebop where there's this overarching story, but then there's individual episodes you're talking about where they kind of stand alone and everything. But,
I mean, there's one-off episodes throughout the show. Even later on, like Eugene and Steve, the other 2 directors, were amazing at comedy. And I forget what episode it was. I know for us, we had things labeled a little differently than they came out on Netflix. So I forget what their episode numbers and stuff are and what season they were in the Netflix drops. But I had an episode with Karan where it's like an insane episode that he's definitely the lead in it. And I was like, whoa, it's my first comedy episode. And I really tried hard, and the board artist did a great job. And I really tried hard to make sure the comedy was working in it. And hopefully it was successful, but when you would get those one-off things that you're just like, this is pure fun, like I have to make this.
Do you feel like you normally get the more action or dramatic stuff? Is that normally what you feel like you're pretty capable with, or?
You'd get either or. I think initially when I started, like the first season, I was getting more probably heavier like action episodes.
Because I saw some of your episodes that you did, and I thought those were done really nicely. How much of that are you involved with in terms of like are you actually drawing out the choreography, or like how does that process work?
It just depends which one. The way Voltron worked is there was a story team at Studio Mir, and they were doing great work. So they do like the initial pass. So we hand out the script.
This is Korea?
Yeah, in
Studio
Korea.
Okay.
Yeah, Studio Mir, who's doing the production, the animation production of the show. There are board artists for each team. So technically there would be about 3
Per episode?
Yeah, per
Okay.
director's team per episode. So there's about 9 storyboard artists, maybe a little more, but you hand out, the script with your director's notes. It gets storyboarded, and then director sees like a rough pass. You make your notes along with the showrunners. Joaquin and Lauren would look over stuff, and then Ryu, one of the supervising producer. So we're all kind of, everyone's kind of got their hands in it, jumping on it, massaging it down to the final episode that you see. But
Gotcha.
we're just lucky to have so many talented people working on everything.
It really shows, man. It's a really special show, and I think I'm sure that you guys have seen the effect of it. A lot of fandom for it.
Yeah.
So before that, you said you worked on Korra. Had you always been storyboarding with your career with animation?
No. I'll try and make this short, not a long. My career story, but
those are okay though. Sometimes, I know a lot of viewers are taking notes about how to figure this out.
I appreciate it. Actually, definitely. I've been working now for about 8 years in the industry, and my favorite part is hearing everyone's story, because nobody has the same story.
Path, right?
And it's not I went to art school, I graduated, I got a job, and here I am. That does happen, but it's more rare than you would think, and not in a bad way. It's like, for me, it took me 3 years before I got into animation, and
that's something that you always were hoping to land.
Yeah. When I first started in college, I got out of high school. I went down and looked at. I'm from California, Northern California. I went down and looked at Cal Arts and the things, and realized whoa, this, there's these schools that are. I can't really speak for it, because I don't know everything since I didn't go there, but there's really, really good people there who already had a portfolio getting in. I'm this guy from high school who has no clue, just I like Aladdin. And
I've heard that about Gobelins, and I've heard that about Cal Arts, where you basically have to be really, 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 really good before you even apply. And I have also heard from some graduates saying, I didn't really learn much, but it was really more about the connections I got out of that school.
It's that's all schools, I think.
It is, right?
I wish almost, high school can't prep you for it, but I wish that in high school there was a counselor that said college is what you make of it. You find that out as you go along. But I know, so when I went to San Jose State, it was an amazing school. Like I said, I went and looked at some art schools, was whoa, I can't afford this, nor am I ready for this. So I went to junior college, jumped to San Jose State from there, which was great because it was close to my house. Didn't even know it had an animation, illustration program. But at that point, it was definitely illustration for me, and I wanted to do children's books, or I loved comics. And then you realize print media is kind of dead. I know everyone has a similar story like that, but my senior year, I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And I dabbled in some storyboarding, some CG animation and stuff. But I saw Goblin's film, the Pirates film.
Yeah.
And I was oh my God, this is insane. One, because it was action, comics and anime and stuff that I liked. But it was doing it in this style that looked like Disney to me, with production value that was amazing. So that was the first time, senior year, that I saw Gobelins. And then senior year, I also traveled down with 3 friends we didn't sneak in, but we got into the producer show at Cal Arts.
Oh, fun.
By Martha Baxton, great person at Cal Arts. She gave us tickets to let us go in. So we were these, kids from another school who got to sit in on this, and it was weird because I remember sitting there, and since we're not from Southern California, we didn't have necessarily. We did get professionals through this Acme program at San Jose State, but I never had like, Eric Goldberg walk right past me, or Glenn Keane sitting in a seat in front, and James Baxter, all stuff. So going to producer show, I was like, oh my God, it's the who's who of animation. And
you're more interested in the audience than the actual.
But then when their films came on, and I could name all these names that I still remember, like a weird fanboy, but I remember seeing their films on screen. So between, and there's a bunch of schools out there that are amazing, but seeing that Go Blonde short, and then seeing the CalArt shorts that year, and it was 2007.
It kind of showed you that 2D is still alive, that there's still a room for that, right?
It definitely gave me this like, oh, people are doing animation, this is viable. And it's a weird thing to like feel as you're leaving college. So seeing that kind of gave me a lot of hope, and other friends too.
That short in particular is really neat, because I always felt that what I liked about French animation is that, like you were saying, it has almost like this American appeal, because it's using those sort of animation principles that a lot of high-end stuff here has.
Right.
But then it has almost like that Eastern adult tone to it. And kind of putting those two things together, I always felt the French were really good at doing, and which is interesting because now Legend of Korra and Voltron is a little bit of East meets West. So it's kind of funny how that particular short planted a seed in your head, and here you are kind of doing this, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say I am very lucky to be working on any of this stuff, because I am, like, I always, on anything I work on, I always pretty much consider myself like bottom of the barrel, and like, just really happy to work with these people.
Sure.
From, I don't know, in getting out of college, I went into like Facebook games. It was like casual gaming was big on PCs at the time, and then in the next few years, like Farmville and all these things came out that kind of blew up the whole casual game scene. Just before iPhone games and all that became huge. And so,
did you work on Farmville, Chris?
I didn't, but probably a ripoff of Farmville, I'm sure. But that was just doing a lot of working at some small studios up north, and I love the experience because I got to do some character design, some background painting, all these things that now I would never have the chance to do, because it's like what you do here, you're very much in a big studio. You see the credits at the end of movies, and it's like this department, this department, this department. There's no like Rodrigo and all the departments.
Right. It's like if you're like the toenail guy for Shrek, that's all you'll do for a few years.
And those toenails look beautiful.
And they're the best, the best toenails you will ever see.
It'd be such a great portfolio, like just toenail.
It's just rotating turntable of a toenail, just
disgusting but amazing. But yeah, I just went from there. Man, I'm sorry, this is going long.
Oh no.
It was definitely like working in those games. I had a lot of fun. I got to work with a lot of people that I went to school with who were up there as well. And then about 3 years in, 2010-ish, I had some friends that jumped onto Lucas because they were doing Clone Wars at the time.
Cool.
So it was this thing of like, I'll try and jump onto that with them. So I kind of quit what I was doing in casual gaming, and then did just like a quick portfolio for storyboarding. So I just did 2 or 3 sequences. What you hear a lot, for anyone trying to get in, it's like you do like a comedy sequence, a drama sequence, an action sequence. So that little portfolio I sent out, obviously no one cared, and so you're depressed. You like quit your job and are trying, and this weird thing happened where Disney feature. I had went to CTN the very first year.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I got to meet Paul Briggs, who's amazing. And he was very nice to, later in that year, he said, hey, Disney's looking, Disney has this like opening for the training program.
Oh, great.
So because I wasn't in school anymore, I would have never heard about it. All the schools are, like, hey, the training programs are coming, everyone turn in their portfolios. But because I was out, if not for him, like I wouldn't have heard about it.
Yeah.
And so
it's always that that one person that it's it just I see that reoccurring theme, I guess, happening with people who get in. It's like there's an industry person who recognizes someone who's talented and trying, and they give them they throw them a
little
bone.
leg up.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is true. And I mean, in every sense, like I had a friend from school, Nelson, who got me my first job at the small studio up north. I had, moving on from there, I had another friend from school, Aaron, that helped me. And then that was like Paul, and then another friend from school, Kendall, who helped me try out for the Disney thing. I got that. That's what made me move down here. And then after 6 months, I didn't get a job after the training program at Disney. So, you're heartbroken. You're like,
wow,
this was this was the big, Disney. It's the thing that we all know. And I remember going from there. Bert, a guy that I had met there, helped me get a job on Spider-Man as a revisionist in story, and that was my first big. So from Disney, like a story trainee, to story revisionist.
Which Spider-Man show? Sorry.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Sorry.
Okay. Cool.
So that was 2011.
And sorry, you were doing revisionist.
Revisionist, yeah.
Okay.
So
Great.
that was like kind of my big. I guess Disney made me move down here, and then Spider-Man was my big break into meeting like all the action people who I eventually stuck around with all this time.
Cool. So from early on, it seems like you did have an affinity for action stuff. Is that something that you like doing? Or?
Yeah, it just like I grew up with comic books and then later anime, and it was this thing of like, you look at those type of drawings and those things, and you're like, I want to do this, but I don't know if it's in actual comic books. And you love animation too. It's like, how do I make this work? And then in college was more the seeing, Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, these things are amazing. That Incredibles would come out.
Totally,
so you saw the crossover of action and beautiful feature animation.
Yeah, and that exploded. I mean, there was definitely a market for that, so to speak. Yeah.
And that's like, for me in college, Pixar was pretty out of the question. It was like, you heard like maybe one person got in there. There was a couple openings, and everyone in the whole entire world wanted to do that. So you know how it is. The industry is like, it's kind of who you know. First and foremost, like you have to work hard to like get your skills to a certain level, and then be in the right place at the right time or whatever. There's a lot of luck. I feel very lucky to work on anything that I ever have with the people I have. Even Joaquin and Lauren on my first job on Spider-Man, I had seen some of their storyboards from, people have each other's stuff in the industry, and I had seen some of their work and was just like, who are these people? So you start to learn names, and then cut to like 2 years later, I was working with them on Korra, and then going back and watching Avatar, and Mike and Brian created this beautiful, amazing universe, and being able to jump on, this thing that they had created was like pretty mind-blowing, and I feel lucky to be, not that many people get to work on stuff. It's
crazy.
Like that.
I mean, no, Avatar is there's a hardcore following for that show. I was actually looking into buying I think the digital series on I forgot what service, but every season was $30, and I thought, oh God, it's been about 10 years now, and people are still paying $30 a season. That's $120 if you want the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought this is definitely a big thing in animation. I think it sort of attracted a lot of good people, and a lot of those folks are obviously doing other cool stuff, like Voltron and everything. So after Voltron wrapped, I guess the first couple seasons, did you decide to do feature after that, or did you do more television?
No, after the first, so I worked on like the first 52 episodes of Voltron, like every third. And the show is amazing. It's also a very difficult show, so it was at a point like,
I know the budget.
need a little
You're telling me the
breather
budgets
and
were pretty slim.
Yeah, I mean, there's what is being made for Voltron is like, it's this like grand, amazing looking show, and you'd be surprised, like, its quality is here, and I know that, like, it's not being made on like a feature budget or anything, so.
Yeah. That's just the talent compensating for
yeah,
for
yeah.
anything. Yeah.
No one wants to put out bad work, you know,
Right.
in any project.
Right.
So, and I'm sure a lot of shows and movies in the industry, you know, we're all creatives, you know, even though we're only small pieces of the puzzle, we're all making sure that one piece of the puzzle is like the best that it can be. So that the whole overall thing, you know, looks like $1 million.
I hear a lot of situations like that where it's almost like a few good men is all it takes to really make something look, I guess, expensive, or however you want to call it, like something of quality. Because I think about even the first Deadpool movie, the budget on that was less than $50,000 from if I'm not mistaken, and that felt like $120 million.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I say million? That the budget on that was less than 50 million, and
Okay.
it looked like it was at least 100 million to make
Yeah,
that.
it looks like it fits in with any of the like 150,
Any other-
250
right.
million movies.
Right. It just goes to show you that like it's just it's the having the right people, right? Even if it is a small situation.
And any you know, creative endeavor, there's the best case scenario, and then there's the worst case scenario. And I think as things are being made, some things just get lucky, and it was an easy production. Other things, you know, wrenches get thrown in the gears, and it probably costs more money to make. You know, like a movie that loses a director and has to hire someone else and do reshoots. I'm sure that balloons budgets. But yeah, I mean, Voltron it's crazy how good it looks, and that's, you know, goes a lot to Joaquin Lauren, DreamWorks Studio, Mir Studio for sure, Benjamin, our line producer. Like it's all like very well overseen by those people, and then Mir oversees just like knocking stuff out of the park.
Joaquin was a boarder to begin with, right? He was, or was he I know he was doing.
Yeah, Joaquin was he's the
showrunner, right?
He's a showrunner, yeah.
Right, but before that, I mean, does he still get his hands dirty in terms
yes,
of like?
Yeah. So that's like if there's ever like an art book for Voltron, which that would be amazing. DreamWorks, do it. If there's an art book or like, you know, a lot of behind the scenes where they showed boards, you would see like the showrunners like imprints everywhere, like Joaquin Lauren, and then supervising producer Ryu, like Keon Ryu, like they have their DNA is in like everything. You know, same with Eugene, Steve, and myself and directing. It's like I said, it's kind of this labor of love that everyone's just doing their best, and like that, you know, this sequence looks great, but you know, we could make it that much better.
That's pretty neat, because that does harken back to even like the Batman animated series where Bruce Timm was, you know, the producer on that, but he still was, you know, making concept and design, and I'm sure he was boarding and doing animation. So
that's beautiful. Like working with people who never forgot what it was like to do the grunt work, because you know, I've worked on things where like the supervising producers and showrunners like don't, you know, they go to all the meetings, but they don't get down in like the nitty gritty of the show making, and like that is not, you know, that's not them, and like that wasn't, you know, Mike and Brian on Korra were, you know, down in there, like, you know, it's just like everyone's working to bake this amazing cake or something, and like there's nobody just standing in the back like looking over people's shoulders. It's like everybody's down there getting flour all over themselves and stuff.
That's a pretty good analogy, because I feel like at any Michelin star restaurant, the head chef obviously knows how to cook, but it's weird how sometimes in animation, the guy who's the head chef doesn't know how to microwave a pizza or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely shows with a show like Voltron and those kind of things where the main producer and the showrunner is still an artist by trade and was in the trenches back in the day, and yeah, that's cool to hear that his like you said, his DNA is sort of permeated all over the show. And also that first like
the very first episode, Lauren, Joaquin, and Ryu boarded it. So the episode's amazing, and if you go back, you'll see their amazing talent in that very beginning of
Is there
Voltron.
like, would you say a signature like styling that you sometimes see show up, or like?
I'm trying to think. I mean, Lauren is amazing at everything, really. She's amazing at action and drama and comedy. She can do the best, like, funniest crayon scenes, the most heartfelt, any type of drama scene, for sure. Like, she's almost like a go-to drama person. And then, her action is like, she could do these amazing space battle scenes and stuff that it'd blow your mind. Joaquin, like, same. And Ryu, they're all so good at that. But there's certain things, like, if you see a character, and Joaquin said it before, if you see a character doing like a jump into a roll or something, if you see a roll, it's probably done by Joaquin, because he has like this sixth sense for like physicality, I think. And then Ryu comes from this, he was a key animator's amazing background for animation. So he can, like, he's like an artist's artist. Like, and I don't know even how to describe it. He's like, all three of these people are people that we all work for because we all look up to them, and they're like.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there is a lot of kung fu and like I guess almost kung fu movie inspired stuff I see in Voltron, and I wonder if Joaquin is if that's something that, and I'm sure maybe you yourself had an appreciation for that kind of stuff growing up, because that is something that I love about the show. Anytime there's a chase scene or there's a battle, all of a sudden the choreography gets really detailed and, like, really I mean, you can feel the weight of the characters as they're doing backflips and this and that, or dodging lasers and whatnot. So
yeah it's there's they're amazing at what they do, and then the directors and then the board artists we're all feeding off each other to try and make the best thing. I'm not the best at that stuff. Like, I try, but it's like I'm watching masters, with lightsabers, and I'm the kid in the garage just swinging wildly. There's so many people who understand, like, physicality in these shows. It's something, like, what I love about boarding is that, especially on Voltron, seeing with a lot of board artists from overseas, they were seeing what we were doing, we were seeing what they were doing. There's times where boards would come back and we're looking at it and they're just like, how did they do that? Like, you almost can't understand what's going on until you get deep into the file, and they're looking at how we're working in this program, Storyboard Pro, so there's layers, and you're making like an animatic version. So you're almost watching things like pretty fully realized with the dialogue and everything in it, and it's amazing just to see what each other are doing. Then the next episode, you're building off of that and trying to be better. So just in the technical aspect of it, like everyone was growing, like, exponentially. I think from that started in Korra for me. Like, I started on the book 3 there, and day one, it's like I'm looking at the computer. I've never used this program before, and I think Warner Brothers, a lot of artists had used it. So I see the Storyboard Pro, and I'm like, how do I do this? And I'm sure I sat next to my assistant director, who was Steve On at the time. So I'm just like, this board artist, like, Steve, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I think the first few weeks was probably so annoying for him. Like, he was so gracious to help me out. And he had worked in it before and knew all these tricks. And it by the end, when you're understanding, you have the things you bring to the show, and then this technology that allows you to bring those
sort
things.
Of express that, yeah. Do you feel that at the end of any production, you feel like you finally have a better grasp on it about the time? No. It's constantly
and for me, never. And I hear, there's the imposter syndrome that all artists have, or a lot of artists have. I think about it all the time. Like, when are they going to realize that I don't know what I'm doing? And like, I'm going to get my pink slip. Every time you get a call on the phone at the office, you're like, it's going to be the call, like, that they're just going to be like, no, hey, we know you don't know what you're doing. And
well, I mean, I think that's just exhibits that you always are putting a fire under your butt to make sure you're always pushing yourself, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of the idea,
Yeah, even if you're bottom of the barrel, like, you still like can't stop because that bar is always being raised. So, it's I always like use the metaphor of there's people who are above the water doing amazing stuff, like surfing, I don't know. But and then there's the people who are swimming underwater, just like trying to get up to get breath. And I always feel like I'm underwater, but you're still somehow staying alive through it all.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, whatever you're doing, it's working out, man. You have a pretty impressive breadth of work so far. Because I didn't realize that you were on the last How to Train a Dragon, right? Part 3. Yeah. So how did I guess you're knowing folks at DreamWorks as it was kind of helped land that kind of gig, or like how did that?
Yeah, it was a weird. I got on that through. I was really excited because I love Dragons, the franchise, and I before I got into animation, the first film had come out, and it just blew me away. Just like Incredibles, like those are the two movies that I was like, oh my god, I got to do this, and I had taken a class with Tron Mai.
Absolutely.
Do you know Tron?
No, he's great.
Yeah,
we actually talked about him when I talked to Tonico.
Okay.
I know he and Tron get along pretty well.
Yeah, Tron brought Tonico and I both in.
Oh, fantastic!
Near this like last year production or pre-production for Dragons, and put our stuff in front of Dean, and we were lucky to get brought on. And Tonico was my office mate, so
that's cool.
It was great, and I miss like. I am so lucky to work with the Voltron crew, and I've been so lucky to work with the Voltron crew, both on Korra and Voltron. Sorry, it's nice to be able to work with the same crew for a long time, and I love everyone on it. There's nobody who I'm like, I don't like that person. It's like they're all amazing, yeah. And you'd work with them in a second. And then there's the Dragons crew. Like, I got so lucky on that. Everyone was so inspiring, so good, so willing to like share with each other. We ate lunch with each other every single day. Like it was amazing experience.
It's funny because I think people don't realize that every now and then you get in a situation where there's a lot of ego or there's a lot of selfishness where it's like, which is silly because at the end of the day you want the product, you want the show to be the best possible. And that doesn't happen unless you're being generous and helpful and sort of lifting up people around you to make sure everybody's trying to hit the same thing, you know what I mean? So
creativity is so weird because a lot of creatives, I would say, probably grew up in high school and things. You're in the shadow reading a book or drawing or whatever by yourself, and then you get in animation, and it's like, oh, now you're gonna make this thing with like 1,000 other people, and you're thrown into like a big party, like everyone's in the pool, and you're like, oh, I don't like this. This isn't me. Like, I want to go in the corner. Like, I gotta take my shirt off. No. So it is a
great irony of the animation industry.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it works still somehow. Every movies still keep coming out. So
I think it happens when it's sort of like you meet other kindred spirits. It's like, oh, I didn't know you liked fill in the blank. Also, oh, I geek out about that too. I love that too. Hopefully there's a camaraderie that kind of grows out of that, right? Like,
I remember on Spider-Man after Disney, because Disney, I had two. Really awesome trainees with me in the story department, Jihyun and Bert. And I remember Jihyun had like a Miyazaki storyboard book. I think it was probably for Kiki's Delivery Service, if I'm remembering, but
like,
I'm not sure.
Shit.
Yeah, and you're like, yes, okay, this is amazing. We all like think the same. And then on Spider-Man, I remember my first day starting there and seeing all these like Gurren Lagann and Fully Cooley, like all these Gainax shows and anime books on everybody's shelf. Anime. Hey, there's a Japanese bookstore over here. Like, what? And then like going at lunch there together and buying books, and just once you find that kindred spirit, like even from Spider-Man in 2011, like 7-8 years ago now, it's like I met so many great friends who I still work with now, and we just all love the same thing and are so inspired by the same things. And you're right, you don't want to like let that go after, because you're like, oh,
yeah,
we
it's a
all
special
love it.
thing once you click creatively that way.
Yeah.
No, I in my short stint in television, I made sure that I brought in, my because I was boarding on AXCOP, and I brought in
nice.
it was the Batman animated series art of book, which I've gone through that way too many times, that I can count. And then I brought in like my Frank Frazetta book. I brought in like so many things that I was like, if for whatever reason, like the posing, the color, whatever, like we just need to fill this room with these kind of vibes, because hopefully that kind of infects everybody in a good way. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's cool.
I still have that, like my current job.
The Batman one?
Yeah, there's like that I won't talk about, but like I'm lucky that like Butch, my producer who's running it, he brings in these books every day, and it's there's a lot of collectors, obviously it's like it's really cool when people are willing to like come in and bring in things and share them, and it's just like in what we do, like it's so easy to stagnate, and it whenever anyone brings in a new thing to look at, or somebody creates a new thing at even another studio or wherever, or overseas, it's a new anime, it's a new show, Last Man in France, like that show like blew a lot of us away on Voltron and gave us like a new fire too. Like we weren't, there's nothing we can like directly pull from a lot of these things, but at least it's inspiring. You can watch a Mickey Mouse short one day, and that make you push harder in your anime based project, and vice versa, and that's, I don't know.
It all feeds each other for sure. Yeah. I was going to mention, just to back up a little bit, because you mentioned how Dragons was a big thing for you, and I didn't work on it, but I remember being on the campus when it was being put together, and it's funny because it was one of those movies that it didn't initially have a big bang, but it sort of found its legs eventually, almost like the Iron Giant, where I just remember that the Monday rolled around after the weekend, and a lot of people were a little bit disheartened that it wasn't like, I think it made about 40 million, but it's one of those things that because it's like any good piece of art, it kind of transcends its sort of time at the box office, and then all of a sudden you see the almost the ripples of that, right? And then all of a sudden, fast forward to today, and there's like this hardcore, like very fervent base of people that are waiting for the third one now, which is kind of exciting to see. So I feel so you were on that for
I was on it for about a year. So,
okay, cool.
Toward the end of it. So they're like, when I got in, I got to watch one of the reels of the movie, and then there's certain elements that were still being added, and I cannot wait till that movie comes out and get to. How
do you think it compares, personally speaking, compared to the last two installations? Do you think it's a?
I won't say anything.
Oh, boo. Okay.
It's I mean, what's nice is that, and Dean said it before, so I don't think I'm stepping outside any boundaries, but it is the end of a trilogy, so it's a nice. And again, even on this, I'm an even smaller part than on Voltron. Like I'm such a small little, nothing in the giant barrel. But being able to work on something as a trilogy that's coming toward the end, there's bookends.
Right.
It's nice. It's nice to work on something that's not going to keep going forever, like that has a finite story. That's always, I don't know, that's a nice thing to be able to work on, where there's a clear vision. And
and Dean, I'm sure Dean was, because again, I didn't get to be in any sort of daily sessions with the guy, but I always had the impression that he's pretty thorough. He's pretty conscientious about the decisions he's making, as it pertains to, I guess, the whole world and everything, right? Like, I don't know if you had any sort of good experiences.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. I was so lucky to work with him, and in a second would work with him again. He has very like clear visions of what he wants, and he just understands so much about storytelling. I remember getting like a PDF of, I think, a talk he gave back, at Disney or something. It's a PDF I got in, I think, college, but I remember reading through, and it might have been with a training program or something, but it had something to do with boarding, and just hearing his thoughts on all of that. And then working with him in person and being like, wow, yeah, he knows everything about everything. He's such a good artist himself.
I heard a cool story about how when he and Chris Sanders were head of story for Mulan, and they decided that they were going to really not worry too much about, because I know there's a lot of instructional books about save the cat, or Western story structures at the hero's journey that people sometimes look to as a guide. And I remember hearing, I forget if it was either him or Chris, but they talked about how we're just going to sort of wing it and figure it out as we go along. And they spent a long time sort of coming up with these pieces and trying to tie in, what happens in the third act to what happens in the second act, and this and that. And at the end of it all, they kind of took a step back and said, oh, we actually just ended up making, the sort of traditional American story structure only because that's sort of organically what made sense to us.
Okay.
And they said, they kind of joked and they wondered if they would have saved time if they had just read a book about it or something.
Yeah.
But I think that is still cool that they didn't, just because if anything, it solidified how a good, maybe a satisfying story is unfolded, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of neat.
I mean, what I learned from that process is, because it was the first feature I had worked on for an extended period of time, and it was so cool to be in the story rooms and see, there's definitely a structure there, but then there's little, every time you put up a screening, there's things that are working, things that aren't, and when you have to go back and change something that's not working, that affects everything around it, something way later. So structure is so hard, and then making character work and each moment work on its own, but then I'll also tie together. There's so many push and pull aspects of it, and I'm watching Dean is it's like watching a Michelangelo or a Leonardo or something, because you're like, how are you doing? How do you hold 90 minutes together and make all this work with specific constraints and characters changing along the way, and how that affects the other characters and all the moments, and it's so much to
kind of keeping it all straight in his head.
Yeah, he can do that, and luckily, there's supervisors in all the departments: animation, lighting, story, layout, all that. It's you have a nice team that's able to hold all that together too,
right.
As you know.
I was gonna say it's that's interesting about story is that like you were just mentioning how it feels that you might have something that's you're going down the path and it's sort of making sense, and this is leading to this. And then you kind of want to, just because you kind of want to have this sort of moment in the movie, just because maybe you're creative, just maybe that week you were inspired to come up with something, but then you realize that, well, that's not quite complementing everything else. So it sort of makes, it's almost like the whole puzzle has to come together otherwise. But yeah, I guess it's like you're saying, Dean is the kind of guy who can sort of see where the holes are and knows where to connect what to what.
And that he is he's a writer director, not just a director or just a writer. He's
not too lopsided with visuals, not too exactly. Yeah,
he really does. He has the whole movie in his arms. From front to back, which
when you're boarding things out, because I know even within smaller sequences there is a structure to that as well. Obviously, it's supposed to complement the bigger three acts, or however you guys structure Voltron. But is that something that you run into personally when you're like, well, I'm starting here and I want to end up here? Are those sort of problems that you work out also?
I mean, everybody works differently. There's people that can work linearly, non-linearly. They're jumping around. If you get a sequence and okay, I know I need to build to this point, so I'll start actually at the end and then loop back to the beginning or fill in the middle, or I'm just going to start. If you have a script and you're just like, okay, I'm going to start here and just go forward and then go back and look at it again, and then, ooh, this moment's actually bigger than this one, and that's supposed to be the biggest, so I need to bring that down and this up.
Oh, that's cool. You're thinking about like building up more exciting moments and sort of building to bigger things. Yeah.
And it's great because you have time to like iterate and do different versions and try it out. So
I think it's neat because I always feel that that's why animation or filmmaking, I guess in a broader sense, is kind of cool, because it's a lot like music, where I think musicians and filmmakers think the same way, where they're thinking about rhythm and they're thinking about am I building up to a moment or something, and it's that same sort of part of your brain. I think obviously different mediums, but it's kind of neat how that parallels that way.
It really does, yeah. That for me, Voltron was a big learning experience. I'm still learning this, but there's two things that are really important to me now that probably weren't a few years ago: is rhythm, like the rhythm and pacing of like say in Voltron an episode, that pacing is super important, because sometimes you're getting down to the nitty gritty of just the drawings and you forget about the whole pacing of it all. And then when that final episode comes back and you're watching and you're like, oh, that's playing really fast and then getting slow, and I wish it built like this. That's something that I still have to learn. And then just entertainment value too. It's like from the very first, like that was the big note I got at Disney back in the day for the training program, was just like, what you're doing works, but it's not like that entertaining. And again, it's because I was probably just concentrating on the drawing, because you're getting into story, animation, anything, and there's kids who come out of school and know, or adults coming out of school that know, oh, okay, I have to do this many drawings in a week. But I think of the things I boarded in school, and I did maybe like 40 drawings in a week, and then you get on the job and you're like, I have to do like 200, 300 in a week, like whatever it takes. Like you have to do way more. So I'm so worried about like this drawing looking good that I forget about the pacing and just, is this even funny, or are people crying or whatever?
Works the same way with character animation.
Okay.
Like I think I talked to a guy named Joe Bowers, who I animated with back in the day, and I know
Joe.
He's great.
I've met him through you guys, through Andrew, and
super talented guy.
Yeah.
But we talked about that a little bit, how sometimes all of a sudden you start to focus on the wrist movement, and then you lose sight of like the overall pose or the speed of it or whatever. And then it's something that like it's like these mental things that as an artist you have to watch out for, otherwise you lose sight of that.
This is kind of funny side story, but when I got to visit Korea, I got to go to Seoul and go to Mir and Studio Rev and see what they were doing, and there are so many amazing people and just like the best of the best talent. And it was amazing because one thing I noticed is, I don't know if it's just if this is totally true or not, but it's just what I noticed walking around, was that like here I feel like I see people zooming in on their stuff a lot. Like let's say in just 2D drawing, it's like zooming in, okay, I'm gonna fix that eye. But there, like, I felt like no one was zooming in. Like everyone was treating the canvas as a piece of paper, and just like, you're not zooming in on paper, right? You're just drawing it, and you have to draw that eye. You're like putting your head a little closer and drawing it. And I did not see like zooming in. And I was like, oh man, I have to remember that for when I get home, because you spend all that time on those small pieces, and then later you're like, I don't even see it in the shot. Like it's this little thing in the background.
I get what you mean. Yeah,
so that kind of
self-editing kind of thing.
Like thinking about a digital canvas as paper, so you're not wasting time. Like that made sense to me, and I can't say that I totally follow that all the time. I still have my bad habits, but
right. Well,
it was pretty cool to see.
That is cool. I mean, I can't even imagine. Is the vibe of that place compared to an American studio? How does it compare in terms of just, I don't know, from the time you spent there, I guess?
We were there for like a week.
For about a week, okay.
I mean, it's when anyone visits, it's like if your
Right.
family visits too, you're wining and dining people. So you don't,
Putting a
you
certain
don't
image
totally
up.
see the real day to day, but I just like everyone at Studio Mir, like, I don't know, I love them. They work so hard, and like I still talk to a couple of the guys through like Facebook and Instagram and stuff, keep in touch, and I don't know. I have such a heart for their studio and what they're doing.
I get the impression that the work ethic over there is pretty hardcore. I mean, it is, I think generally in the animation industry, at a certain level, everybody's pouring their soul and their heart into everything.
Yeah.
But I just get the impression that over there, it's kind of maybe broader in their society.
Yeah,
or whatever,
there was one storyboard artist there who, a director. He was like, he turned, amazing boards, turns them in all on time, and like, we're struggling to get our stuff done on time. So he's doing the highest quality work, getting it on time, and I learned that he was also animation directing at the same time. So he was doing like not only a job that is hard enough on its own that like I personally struggle with, but then he was also doing the secondary job, and I was like, when are you sleeping? Like, that's amazing. And
it feels that there's a creative tank, or it's not even like a tank. It's like a set amount of decisions that the human brain can make in any single 24-hour period.
Yeah.
And so if you're already sort of killing yourself with your own stuff, and then to go and sort of have to make decisions as a leader in a leadership role, like how does that even? That's crazy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
People do it though. It's like you see supervising animators that are like, they're in dailies all day, but they still have their own shots to go get done at the end of the day, and you're like, when are you doing that? Like, I don't like Tron. Even like he on Dragons, he's like, he's the head of story, but he also has to storyboard scenes, but he's in all these meetings, and I'm in a very small amount of meetings, and I'm like, I'm a meeting, I got to get this thing done. So it's just impressive. Like, there's such a high level of professionalism by everyone, in studios everywhere. And it's hard. We're only human, and
sure.
I'm always still blown away. Like Tanika, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
He can go home and work and animate after a whole day of storyboarding. Like, I can't switch gears like that and get excited once I get home to jump on something again. And I used to be able to, but I'm mid-30s now, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes I think too, it's a matter of being cast into the fire. So if I imagine that if you were given a position like that, like it's not a matter of can I do this? It's like, well, no, I have to.
Yeah.
Here we go. You know what I mean? So yeah. That's cool. Yeah, Toniko's great. He like you said, he still does. I actually found him because of his online stuff.
Okay.
I didn't realize that he was a boarder for DreamWorks and for all that until after the fact. I was like, oh, that's that guy that does that really cool cartoon dog that dances.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you did all this too? Wow, that's crazy.
He was shooting footage on his phone for one of his dancing dogs, and just like on the spot learning, like, how do I composite this 2D animation with this real footage that I'm shooting on my phone.
He did that on the Glendale campus, right?
Yeah.
I recognized that kitchen area.
A day later, he has this thing he puts on Instagram. I'm like, how did you do that? And he's like, oh, just, there's a video on how to do it. He just goes out of his way to learn the stuff. And it just shows like what a good heart he has for learning. And then he puts out a video of how he did it on YouTube to like share with other people. So he's not just learning, but he's also sharing that. Yeah. And that's amazing. He's such a good guy.
I think that's an important aspect of being an artist is having. I've heard in life that it's good to have sort of a mentor figure, but then almost kind of be like in the middle of where then you also have people that you're sort of dispensing, wisdom and knowledge to. So it's nice to sort of have at any phase in your life be sort of in the middle, right, like that way. So Yeah.
I'm terrible at teaching. I hope that I get better at it in the future to be able to impart knowledge. But I do really, when I do see people that are amazing talents on the internet and stuff, it's like I always am like, look at this to someone who's in a hiring position generally, because it's like
I think sometimes it's
they
just
have to work. You gotta get these people.
Right. No, I was gonna say I think sometimes it's just as easy as just showing people something, like you said, like bringing in art books or making recommendations for shows or movies and this and that. Like you mentioned that French animation.
Last Man?
Last Man. See, I hadn't heard of that, so now I'm going to go home and check that out.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say his name wrong, but I think it's Jeremy Perrin. He's like the work that he and the crew did on that. It's phenomenal. It's such a, all the let's say where they put their money for like the really good 2D animation versus where they held back and just had panning over shots and stuff, but finding the right shot for that story. Like everything about it is just perfectly done.
That's cool.
It blows me away, and a lot of friends. Like,
all right, Chris. Well, we're gonna put you on the grill. Is that the expression?
Sure.
Put you on the spot. We're gonna grill you. That's what it is. So we got a couple of questions from the patrons.
Okay.
For people who are helping the show keep going.
That's awesome.
So the first question is, how many people from the Avatar: Last Airbender series and the Legend of Korra series came to work on Voltron? Which I think you did allude to that, but you didn't get...
Yeah, I mean, specific numbers, I could count them in my head, but I'm not going to. I could just talk about the writing department, the directors, showrunners, art department.
It was pretty close, you would say, a big majority.
And what's cool is that because we're working with the other studio overseas, a lot of the people who worked, like say as a storyboard artist on Korra are directing on Voltron. Like we all got to like move up a position, which is really awesome. Get our feet wet doing something else, but doing that with like working with the same people, it makes it less of a harder, it makes it a much smoother transition.
That's awesome, dude. All right, next question coming at you. Okay, so the question is, are there going to be any characters on a solo journey? I guess like characters sort of breaking off and doing their own thing, I guess is the question.
I don't know, like, because the last episodes I worked on just aired in this last season 6. Mm-hmm. So I don't know from now on, but there's a few episodes before that are like, I worked on one, I forget the title right now, but it was just like Hunk and Keith went off on a specific adventure, stuff like that. And that was one of my favorite episodes to work on. Whenever there's just a few characters instead of the whole cast.
Ensemble, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you really get to mess with the drama and those two characters interacting.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't know fully, like I can't speak to that, but.
Okay. All right. Next question. It's asking if you have any thoughts on the clans shipping that is happening apparently between those two characters.
Yeah, I mean, for shipping, like it was really interesting on this show. This was the first time I saw like the fan base really like pitching relationships and stuff. I'm more of like whatever people want, like whatever characters they want to be together is,
sure.
You're watching these shows and these properties like build over time, and you start to get head canons in respect as you're watching it. And I totally, like, the fan base is awesome. I think that's really cool that I can't speak to one ship over the other.
Sure.
Like I think to each their own, and that's.
I think it's
awesome.
nice. It's nice that it's on that level. I used to joke that I feel like as a creator you're hitting success when there's erotic fan fiction about the characters that you've created.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would say that's a good thing. It shows you guys are onto something, right?
The first shipping thing I ever saw was Harry and Hermione or Ron and Hermione and Harry Potter. And I was like, can't everyone have whatever they want? Like, it's fine. I mean, if you're going outside of the property to make up your own canon anyway, then do whatever you want. Like, it's cool. Like,
right.
It's just that you're that involved with the property is awesome, and that others think like you, in terms of like, I want that to happen too. That's pretty cool. Like,
shows that you guys are moving the needle, so to speak.
But I can't say that there's a few. I think the two biggest ships on the show are Lance and Sheath, which is Shiro and Keith, Lance and Keith.
Oh wow!
And like, to each their own. Like,
sure.
I'm like, support for everyone. Yeah.
So okay, so I have a question for you then. Is there an episode in the series that you particularly maybe would consider your favorite, or one that is kind of special to you in a certain way?
Special to me is probably Kralzera. I think it's in season 5 on Netflix, where Lotor takes. It's a spoiler. Sorry if, if you haven't watched it. Lotor becomes like it's all these different Galra generals, and then he's fighting to become the head of the Galra Empire. That one I spent a lot of time on. The board artist really knocked it out of the park. Art department knocked it out of the park. Everyone loved it. I was really, really impressed with how that one came out, and there was a lot of heart and soul put into it.
Cool. Sweet, man.
And then for other like favorite episodes, they're always like, you tend to not like your own, and like, what the other director's episodes too. So I think there's one episode where Steve directed where Pidge finds her brother Matt. Amazing. And Eugene did the Space Mall episode,
that was a lot
amazing.
of fun. I remember that was season 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought that was really funny. I had a good time with that one.
That was great.
Yeah.
And where Allura loses her father in, I don't know what number it would be, but I think it was in season 1. Eugene did an amazing job, and it's just like all the designers and everybody just does such great work. So
oftentimes I'll ask artists if there was ever a show or a movie that when they saw at a formative age, they were like, oh, that's exciting to me. I want to be a part of that whole thing. Did you have an experience like that, like growing up, a movie or something?
I mean, for comic books, it was like X-Men for sure.
Okay.
Joe Madureira, this amazing artist that made me want to draw. And then anime, first thing I saw was Ranma 1/2.
Oh, that's fun, yeah.
Ranma, I don't know how it's actually said, but Ranma was really big. It was even before Dragon Ball and stuff for me. It was like this thing I saw and realized animation can be something different. Nowadays, Sherlock Hound, like all the Miyazaki stuff.
Okay, yeah. Is
And
that he made? How new is that one?
Sherlock Hound is old. It's like late 70s, early 80s,
okay,
maybe.
Gotcha.
I might even be wrong with that, but
he's done a lot of stuff. I only know like a handful of Miyazaki things. So,
okay, yeah. That's like some of the TV stuff he did is my favorite.
Cool.
That, and then Naoki Urasawa, the manga artist, writer, his stuff recently. He like when I'm at work, and then I go home at night and read his books. Like Urasawa is a master storyteller, and that's one of those guys that I get to work the next day and like I wish we could be doing his stuff like as animation.
What he did anything? I'm blanking on.
20th Century Boys, Monster, Pluto. You should read them. I'll let you borrow them. They're dude, amazing. So
sweet, dude. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no. Anything in the movies recently that has made you go, oh, that was worth watching? That was worth $20 at the Burbank AMC.
Ex Machina a few years ago blew me away, and just as like a small sci-fi movie, I love those type of films. Shoot, I don't know.
I was gonna say I feel the same way about science fiction. I think sometimes the smaller it is, the more because I think that medium is more than anything. It's almost like the Twilight Zone, where it's supposed to sort of illuminate a facet of humanity or what have you, and it's maybe less about the robots and explosions and more about.
I think it works best. Yeah, like that.
When it's that way. So yeah, for sure, that movie was crazy when I got a chance to see that finally. So yeah, I don't know why I voted for the longest time. I just thought it had it didn't look interesting, and then I sat down and I was like, I'm an idiot. Why didn't I?
Yeah, somebody brought me to it, and I was just like, whoa, this is like, it's just amazing. It was pretty like game changing for me in storytelling and things.
Yeah, really cool. All right, dude. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show. Always
of course.
nice talking to people who are passionate and excited about this stuff. So we'll have to in the future maybe have you on, maybe have a roundtable discussion.
That'd be
or something.
awesome. Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next week on Shot Talk.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Shot Talk and would like to see more episodes in the future, please consider contributing to the Shot Talk Patreon. You can sign up today at patreon.com/shottalk. There are all types of rewards, like receiving episodes early, access to private Discord servers, and more. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.